All right, welcome. What's up, guys? This is episode 46 of the Man of Mastery podcast, where we are putting purpose and passion into action, where we embrace getting out of our comfort zone to grow, and where we stand ready to lead, ready to learn, and in service to others. It means more to me than you can know. I really, really appreciate your time and your trust to dedicate a bit of your week here to see what you can learn, take away, and apply to improve yourself and those around you. Man, talk about comfort zone. Here we are in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, and many of us are either on self-imposed quarantine or just staying home. Could be local enforcement, could be travel-related mandate. And I got an episode out a few days ago to bounce questions around about the virus with a coaching colleague who's also a top doc on the front lines of this thing, Dr. John Nichols. And he shared a really good article that lists supplements to take and even over-the-counter medicines to avoid related to this virus. So I will get a list of those out in the show notes for this one here. And so just to let you know in advance, the show notes for this one can be found at manofmastery.com/046. So two things before we jump into episode 46, which I'm calling Silent Professionals. All right, one is the power of a tribe. That's all of you. Together, we've already blown through 10,000 downloads a while ago, and on iTunes, we're sitting at, today, I think it's 87 ratings. It's truly awesome, and I just want to keep you posted on the incredible impact that you're having, and you're a part of this. Those ratings and reviews really make a difference. They push the podcast up the charts and help spread the word. iTunes it's really just a search engine. So I'd like to extend a challenge for all of us as a group, as a team, to get us up over at least 100 ratings. So if you're in a place where it's safe right now, just pause the show. And if you would, please take a moment to jump into Apple Podcasts and give us hopefully a 5-star rating, and even take a moment if you could and write a few words in review. And if you aren't quite sure how to do that or can't do that right now from your iPad, your iPhone, or even a computer version of iTunes, I have instructions posted to take you through it. You can hit manofmastery.com/review to learn how to do that in more detail. So gauntlet thrown, let's make this happen. Let's get the team, let's get there together to 100 iTunes ratings. All right, second is also about tribe. If you're a guy looking to kickstart or kick it to the next level, I'd strongly encourage you to come join us on Facebook. At the Man of Mastery is the ID, and apply to join the private group there, where I share additional information beyond what's released publicly. I provide additional thoughts, tips, hints, and ideas. And the idea is to get a community, get a tribe going beyond just myself, to support and serve and drive each other. This is even more critically important now than ever, to stay healthy, connected, strong, positive, and lead our own tribes through this crisis. One of the things I started doing there in the private Facebook group is monthly and spot challenges. They vary, and they're not all physical. But if you want to give something a try, I want to give you a small taste of what I'm talking about in case this resonates for you. All right, so here's what I'd call a spot drill. Find a song that you like that's maybe 3.5 minutes long, or if you really prefer, you could just set a timer. Get into a high plank, right, like the top part of a push-up, and just hold it there. All right, hold that position for the duration of the whole 3.5 minute song, or the timer that you set. Now, you know how long you're going to be there. All you got to do is breathe and just go with it, but observe not just your physiology, but your thoughts. It's like, what do you think about? Do you think about how much time there is left? Do you start to think about whether you can do it or not, whether it's possible or not? Do you have some frame of reference from past experience that you go back to? Or can you simply try to clear your mind, think about breath, think about your next breath, think about being present, and think about holding the best plank that you can, the best plank you ever have. Think about tucking your belly button in towards your spine, about breathing intentionally, keeping a flat back, keep your thighs pressed together, keep your glutes engaged. And just think, can you make this the best high plank you've ever made and hold it for 3 or 4 minutes? All right, try that. And then afterwards, if so, like, was it the best plank ever? How was it? Did you make it to 3 or 4 minutes? And how or what or why not? What happened? If so, how'd that happen? If not, why not? And how'd that break down? What lessons can you take away? And, you could play with this. You could do it day over day. You could try it at different times a day. You could scale it up or down in time, in duration or position. Maybe try a side plank, or you could add a weight vest. So a lot of ways to play around with this and make it not just about the physical, but think about what your mind is doing through physical activities. Okay, and in getting on to today's episode, another really fitting one, I think, given the world that we're in right now, with interviews. I mean, the guest tells their own story. My job's easy on those. It's an autobiography, if you will. And this week's another solo episode, but it's almost more of a biography. So I've had the privilege, and I alluded to it a while ago, I had the privilege to ride along with and observe the local fire department with a couple of their crews and on a 24-hour shift. And I've been taking time with this one to really try to figure out how to share it and how to tell the story. It's one of those experiences that I probably can't even do it justice. You almost have to experience it yourself, but I'm going to give it a try. It's probably also the kind of thing where each person takes away their own message or their own meaning. And so again, I'll share it the best I can. To me, this is a story of leadership, of effective teams, of camaraderie, and ultimately of service. It was a whirlwind 24 hours, and all I could do is kind of make a bit of an outline here for myself, but otherwise I'm just going to go from that and go stream of consciousness on this one. So we'll see how short or long we go and how it turns out. But again, I just hope to do these guys and their story and the opportunity they gave me justice. So with that being said, let's just jump right in and get after it. Silent professionals. What do you think of when you hear that term? Well, some people probably think special operators, door kickers, pipe hitters. In other words, a term usually describing elite special operations, direct action military forces, men and women who just get the job done, what needs to be done. And I'm sure a lot of times it's not the most desirable or glamorous work, but it's done with the mission first every single day. Well, maybe I'm mixing metaphors here, and maybe I'll offend military and first responders both. But the thing is, a couple months ago, I had this opportunity, and it's something I've been previewing for a while now. As I mentioned, it was the chance to go on a 24-hour ride along with a local fire department. And in truth, in full disclosure, and in hindsight, I really had no idea what I was in for. I just said yes, and I just leaned into the unknown. And from a podcast journalism story perspective, I went into this thinking that, I don't know, maybe we have a roundtable interview, or maybe we do a series of behind the scenes or day in the life. And while I knew there would be something in there that would be a really interesting story for a podcast episode or episodes, it turned out completely different than what I'd imagined. And I learned in ways I hadn't even thought of or imagined at all. It was surprising, and it was humbling in ways I definitely didn't expect. And really, even now, a couple months later, in a number of ways, I'm still just digesting some of it. So to go back to the title of this one, Silent Professionals, if that's a label used with esteem and accuracy for anyone, in my opinion, it certainly fits the men of the truck and the engine crew that I had the honor to watch in action recently in the Chula Vista Fire Department. And one more thing before jumping fully in. At the beginning of each episode, I usually try to include a summary, a few lessons learned, or a few action items. Instead, today I gave you that sample spot drill here a couple minutes ago at the beginning. And at the end of this one, I want to look at lessons learned from the ride along, and I'll include some ideas for action items for you. All right, background. Let's do some background and kind of things of that nature. One thing I mentioned back probably in late last year, late 2019, I had a chance to train one day at the same Chula Vista Fire Department at their pre-academy. So the academy is where guys and gals go into I think first they have to get accepted, and then they're into a training program that lasts weeks or months. That's the academy. But now, and these guys are kind of innovative here in this local system, they've got a pre-academy to try to get people ready, at least physically, if not with some of the grit and endurance and mental aspects of these things. And it turned out to be one that by scheduling, I ended up doing it on my 48th birthday. So for any of the guys that sort of joke around and think about pre-academy as the fat farm, that was definitely me. So, there's probably some ways I kept up, but other ways I was definitely falling behind or just surviving, if you will. It was kind of funny. One of the guys in charge said, well, they said you could come kind of audit, and you can definitely participate, but just don't get injured. And I'm going like, dude, I get injured every day with the crazy stuff I try to do at this age. So it's just normal course of business. Don't worry about it. One of the cool things they do, one of the reasons I wanted to share sort of what they do at this pre-academy, is they're really big on brute force sandbags, amongst other things. So if you haven't done any kind of sandbag workouts, that's one brand. It's just a high quality domestic made sandbag made in Colorado. But just the whole sandbag workout concept is it's an unstable and it's a shifting weight, and you can do all sorts of complex movements, functional fitness with it. So that's what they're doing primarily in this pre-academy as the heart of their workout, at least from what I saw that day. And they're doing it a couple times a week leading up to their academies, which I think maybe happen twice a year here in this district. So like functional fitness probably means something a little different to everybody, but for these guys, they're really gearing it to the kind of movements they might have to do on a job. You're dragging fire hoses. You might be dragging a person, another firefighter, someone you're rescuing. So, and they're moving heavy equipment on the job. So they've got things like dragging heavy sandbags, tossing them over their shoulder, hopping up off the ground under weight, a lot of dynamic movements and a lot of interval-based sort of HIIT type of training with active recovery. So I think in between our HIIT intervals for active recovery, we did things like bear crawl and duck walk. So again, I think there's a lot of unbalanced weight and unbalanced carry, sandbag on one shoulder doing squats, right? So a lot of stabilizing core muscles with weight on one shoulder as opposed to the other, and then flip-flop. Somebody used the term professional athletes, and after kind of getting a small taste of this pre-academy, which is supposed to be nothing compared to the physicality of the academy, and then seeing what these guys are doing on the job, I'll mention this a little bit more later, but I think the term professional athletes is completely accurate for the fire department and from what I've seen. And it's such a physical job these guys are preparing to do every single day. So in the pre-academy, I guess the way I would look at it in hindsight is they're hitting it hard, primarily in the physical arena. And so I had a chance to weigh in afterwards. It's awesome, and I'm grateful and gracious that I even got a chance to throw some suggestions in. But it gave me an opportunity for my coaching and for my own activities, maybe to throw some other ideas at what they're already doing in the physical and a bit of the mental and the flexibility and things like that. So certainly I hope to have the chance to work out with them again in the future. Maybe help them work some other things into their program, some things like breathing, some explicit breathing tools and techniques. And we talked a little bit afterwards about things like mindset and mental toughness techniques. So those would be super cool to help these guys going into the program. But overall, this whole pre-academy concept and the couple guys that have designed and are running this thing, they are on the leading edge from a national perspective of a program like this for their academy entrance. And it's really all about really getting them ready to get in there and optimize their performance and help them ensure success. All right, and moving along towards talking about this ride along, let's maybe talk about the purpose and how it all happened. So I got invited by a friend I've got to know who's a truck captain there. And I've only gotten to know him over the last year or so, but he's one of those guys you can tell right away that he's just kind of cut from a different mold. There's something different. And it's not just in terms of the outdoor and the active stuff that we had a chance to do up in the mountains last summer with our boys. I mean, I don't know. I think the term warrior scholar comes to my mind. So on a daily basis, this is a leader. He and his team are the first line of defense for our community. They're addressing life-saving situations, and they're often in harm's way. But as much as I've had a chance to glimpse how they address sort of the what of the mission, I've really been impressed by the focus on the how. Thinking, reading, learning, trying. It's philosophy, it's psychology, it's leadership, it's team building, and all those kind of dynamics. So he's actually been a really great sounding board and input on this podcast, as a matter of fact. And this is my buddy that I shared with you a while back. He talked about his secret sauce of teams, of just loving every one of the guys. I think, for their uniqueness, their background, their talents, their assets, contributions. It reminds me a lot of Nick Hayes, the teams guy I interviewed about his book Elite, and the answer he gave when I asked him about organizations with dead weight, at least, kind of my perception, those were my words. And he said that he likes to keep in mind that every single person, every room he's ever been in is better at something than him. Somebody that he can learn something from. So just really cool perspective. And so when my buddy said that people don't really understand what they do in the fire department, and that it's hard to explain the bond and the dynamic and the incredible nature of their team, that I should do a ride along and check it out, man, I was all in. Before we get to what a 24-hour ride along maybe looks like, let's talk about what I knew, or what I thought I knew about the fire service. So what is it, right? There's TV, there's movies, there's seeing these guys drive around the neighborhood. I mean, I've seen the truck at the park, the community center, out at the taco shop, the grocery store, and you kind of see, I don't know, I perceive a happiness, a camaraderie, not much stress. I mean, that's what it looked like. I'll just say it. And I think most of us probably think, I don't know, maybe these are like super high, intense, and dangerous events, but that it happen, kind of infrequently on a relatively rare basis. And then, and then go back to, I don't know, chilling out, working out, whatever it might be. And when it comes to, I don't know, fighting fires, I was thinking like backdraft, right? Fighting these huge raging fires, kind of risking it all on every firefight, and just, pure chaos and brute force method. And then back to like the downtime, I'm picturing like a lot of sleeping, I don't know, working out, keeping a clean fire engine, I don't know, coffee, work out, screw around. And, you gotta include the cool stuff too, right? Like firefighter hard hats, and I'm assuming when the bell rings, you get to slide down the pole and hit the truck running, and maybe there's even like a Dalmatian barking and jumping in the truck and tagging along, right? Like, I don't know. I mean, I'm being somewhat exaggerated here, but the point is, I don't know. I've got like 1.5 data points and lots of perceptions, stereotypes, and assumptions. And the reason I mention it is they're pretty much all wrong, obviously, or you wouldn't even be hearing the big wind up. So what else? I mean, I think first responders, and it evokes memories of 9/11 with everything on the line, brotherhood and service and running towards danger. I also think emergency medical, right? I'm thinking like these are the guys that have EMTs in the trucks and who show up, I don't know, probably I'm thinking in the rare occasion that by location or by circumstance, they can get to you before the ambulance. I see them on the highway for auto accidents. And I don't know. I mean, when I see them on the highway, I'm thinking because the car caught on fire is sort of my assumption. And, as a very, very real thing, obviously fires. I live in an area where Southern California, especially when you get a wet winter and things dry out, there's lots of kindling. There are fires, and there've been fires in my neighborhood in the last a year or two. There have been two right in the back. Talking like smoke in the back of our neighborhood with fire either going to rush up and over the hill to another community or right into our community and burn homes. And instead, what happened was these guys in this local fire department in Chula Vista, California, just took massive quick action, and it prevented a ton more risk and damage. So, that is the reality, and definitely want to leave a big thank you for that. And then as far as like what I didn't know, anything, everything, pretty much. As I said, I've pretty much had it wrong all the way around. So I guess first of all, let's cover some fundamentals about maybe my ignorance going into this. One is the job. I had no idea what a day in the life of a first responder, and specifically a firefighter, might look like. I don't know. Do you? And whatever idea I had was more than certainly based on nothing but a few data points. So second, I guess I would say fire truck, fire engine. I don't know, like big red vehicle that rushes out and handles stuff, right? All right, so here's the deal. The truck, or the ladder truck, maybe is a more accurate description, is a longer vehicle with the big ladders on top, which I learned can reach up to 100 feet or more. And then the engine, that's the one slightly shorter. It's the one with all the different lengths of hoses and sizes of hoses that hook up to hydrants. And those are the workhorses of pumping water onto the problem. Put the wet stuff on the red stuff, they say. And then they both carry emergency medical kits and equipment and a bunch of fun-looking tools for breaking stuff open, like, think doors, windows, roofs, that kind of stuff. And one of the really cool medical devices that I thought was amazing that they have on board, it replaces a person performing chest compressions for CPR. So you get the patient lying on a sort of a board, and straps go over their torso, and then it cinches down to hold them in place snugly. And then a strap over their heart performs the chest compressions at the prescribed pace, and I would also guess the right pressure, as opposed to like broken ribs. But the other cool thing that this does, beside being even better for the patient, is that it frees up EMTs to work the problem in other ways. So cool stuff, right? All right, and then let's talk some of what I learned about approach and risk management rules, staffing, efficiency, workload, all that kind of stuff about how at least this fire department operates. So one of the things about going into a fire, going into a building that they mentioned, if I get this right, is you got to have, I believe, 4 guys on site. So if for some reason by staffing and you've got 3 guys on an engine or a truck show up to a scene, they can't go in and fight the fire. They've got to wait for a 4th person to show up from somewhere. So it's just kind of an interesting tidbit when it comes to city budget and staffing and all those kind of things that, maybe that's some helpful context if you ever see that on the news. And I don't know, just some other random stuff here that I learned and thought was cool. One, we were talking about equipment and procedure and things like that they have to punch a hole in the roof of a burning building. So imagine, I think you'd have something like, let's say a building's on fire and you've got that engine that's pulled up and it's helping guys get hoses maybe through the front door of a building. And then you've got this ladder truck and they can get somebody up on the roof to punch a hole in the roof. Why? Because instead of having this fire and all this heat constrained inside of the building, just sort of, raging around and burning all kinds of whatever fuel it can find, here's, think chimney, right? Like here's an outlet for the heat to rise up out of the building and to try to start to minimize the damage that it's doing. So cool stuff. And then risk management. I mean, this was a cool one, especially for somebody who thinks risk management in other ways in their jobs or their lives. So if I get this right, I'll give it a try here. They were willing to, when lives are on the line, their philosophy is to risk a lot, potentially everything. And when property is on the line, they're willing to take some great degree of risk to try to save that property for you on your behalf. But then, when neither property nor lives are on the line, then no risk to their guys and their assets are warranted. All right, now let's talk staffing here in this situation, in this local environment. There are, in this city, and again, this is Chula Vista. It's part of San Diego County. It's the second largest city in San Diego County, and it covers about 50 square miles. So for this area, it's a pretty big city. There are 9 stations currently. 9 stations. So think about that from a size and an area and a workload perspective. And it's something like 44 guys and gals. 44. All right. And so what that looks like across 9 stations, not 44 people at one station, 44 people at 9 stations working shifts that, go 24/7, 365. And across these 9 stations, they've each got one of those engines I mentioned, and there are 2 of them that additionally have the ladder truck. Now, the particular station where I had the honor of the ride along, this is one of those 9, and they take about 6,000 of the approximately 20,000 calls per year that come into the fire department here in this city. So 1 out of 9 stations, let's call it 10%, taking something like 30% of the emergency responses. And they're located, I think one of the reasons for that is they're located in a high density urban area with a population that skews to older in age and lower in income. Now, I mentioned 24/7, so let's talk about work schedule. So 24-hour shifts, right? So it's not a schedule of like work and take a break and rest or sleep, where you're doing like 6 on and 2 off or something like that. The few guys that are on duty for the shift are the full team, and they're ready to respond at all times. But I'll get into more of what a day in the life looks like, all right? But just think about 24 hours. When's the last time you stayed awake for 24 hours straight, much less working, right? And when you do that, how long does it take you to recover and feel right again afterwards? All right. Well, these guys work not only 24 hours, but a string of days. They work 24 on, 24 off, 24 on, 24 off. So after you do that for 4 work days, you get 4 full days off. And then you do it again. And then after the second time you go 4 on, 4 off, you get 6 full days off. 6 full days off. That's pretty cool. But if it sounds like a lot of time off, remember this crosses weekends, crosses holidays, and it's 365. So if you average it out, it's actually 56 hours a week or so. 56 hours a week. So that's almost 150% of what we think of as the normal 40-hour work week. And let's be honest, how much, especially if you're like me and you're in a white-collar environment, how much of a work week do we actually spend just screwing around, whether it's inconsequential meetings or even just time back and forth to the water cooler or to a bathroom break? Well, I mean, when somebody's calling for help or a fire or a medical issue, guess what? There's no calling a meeting to come to consensus about it. It's just time to act, right? So imagine you've got 44 guys covering 50 square miles of a city across 9 stations. And then in each station, you got to figure out how to cover, when you work you work it out, what the calendar looks like for that 24 on, 24 off, et cetera. It's 3 shifts, sort of a shift, A, B, and C, that cover this whole rotation. So it's completely optimized. There are no extra bodies on the bench. So somebody's sick, or guess what? You can take vacation from time to time. When somebody's on vacation, then someone else has to rotate in and work. There's no spare labor. And if you think about it from a city budget perspective, it's cheaper to pay somebody overtime than to carry the fully loaded cost of another full-time employee with benefits and all that. So from a personal perspective, remember you're 24 on and 24 off. So if you pick up just one extra shift, let's say you pick up a shift for somebody sick or on vacation, Now you're working 3 24-hour days in a row before you get a rest. I mean, these are some tough individuals. I'm moaning when I'm up early for a flight, or up super late when it gets me home, and I'm probably just going to get on that flight and go to sleep anyway. I got nothing to complain about. These guys are just out there laying it down day after day. And speaking of that, let's get right down to it. Right, what's a typical day in the life over there? Now, from the little I saw, I'm pretty certain I can say that there is no typical day. But, even in volatile environments, even in the uncertainty of what any given day looks like, you can find opportunities for the discipline of routine. I mean, that's something that can be controllable and can provide some consistency to support the rest of what's uncertain and out of control. So in this case, for a shift that runs about 7 a.m. to 7 a.m., I wanted to get the full experience. And the full experience in the way that my buddy, the captain, runs his day is it starts a little bit earlier than that. It starts with a quick morning service at a local church a little after 6 a.m. So we were talking about this is very much like a morning ritual, a morning routine of finding time in silence and just breathing and introspection, and of course gratitude. And I don't know, maybe sometimes we look for and we find what we need in sermons, but the day I went, this one seemed extremely topical to me. It mentioned something biblical about a table with a candle lighting the middle of the room and bringing light out to the whole room. And I think the metaphor was, a savior, a prophet, dedicating life, giving life in order to uplift others. So, life and potentially death in service to others, focus on others. So, yeah, I mean, that's something you can certainly use to stoke appreciation, gratitude, and definitely a morning meditation and an incredible way to start a day. All right, 7 a.m. shift change. So there's a shift overlap where personnel are turning over and any, I'm sure, information is exchanged that's really necessary or critical. And of course, the hours are not perfectly strict because you could have a crew out on a call overlapping the finish or the scheduled finish of their shift. So you get in, you show up, you park, store your gear in the bunk area. And I've probably got a couple pictures I can post on social media for this one, but to just give you a little bit of a picture, what you've got is a firehouse that's roughly 80 years old. You've got 3 garage bay doors for the engine, for the truck, and for the chief's SUV. There's that bunk area. There's a locker, shower, bathroom. There's the laundry room that doubles as a gym or vice versa. There's the kitchen, and then a bit of a TV break room. And that's about it, or at least what I was involved in. There were some other offices and meeting rooms, I think a number of which are geared to the other staff, the staff who are more routinely out doing proactive fire inspections, like for business, and then reactive fire investigations, etc. So not necessarily out on emergency response every day, although I do know that they show up on scene and remain on call if they're needed. And then that's kind of it. Once you're on, it's on. And as I mentioned, this is a very disproportionately busy station. As I said, the local area it serves is high in population density, and it skews to lower income. So with that comes all sorts of needs and challenges. It means a lot of action. And for these guys who really want to be out there working hard for their community, this is the place to be. So think high population density within a relatively small area means you can get on scene quickly and potentially then you're back and ready for another call, bang, right away again, pretty quick. So let me take you through some examples of the nature and the nuance, at least of the calls that were going out on that particular day that I got to see. All right, one of the first was at a local courthouse, criminal court. And behind the scenes, they had a lady in a holding cell behind the courtroom, I think, waiting an appearance. And she had reported an apparent seizure or maybe something of that nature. Her hands, her arms, her wrists, her shoulders, her neck were all sort of super tensed up. Her face and neck were a bit contorted, and she was just incessantly just spewing nonsense. So taking a quick glance at her sheet, there's pretty clear pattern there. This was definitely a repeat customer to the court system. Meth, 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 meth. In fact, having a look in the other holding rooms through the glass windows, I mean, we have a real problem on our hands, and it's just, you cannot appreciate it from watching the evening news. I mean, those were some scary, scary ladies. Now, the lady in need of medical care, they got her calmed down, and one thought was maybe stress or hyperventilation were causing these muscle spasms, or potentially there was a reaction to some sort of a medicine they'd been administering there in the jail. And I think you probably just try to do your best to treat the symptoms and the purported truth. But I think maybe everybody probably had the same question as I did as to whether this was real or an act. Of course, as a medical professional, I'm assuming you probably just have to look at every one of these things as a real medical need. But by the time she was getting wheeled out of there to the ambulance, I noticed one of her hands and wrists was completely relaxed, right? So yeah, later I heard that at the hospital, she had slipped her handcuffs and she was trying to escape. So man, there are some crafty people out there. But I think for me, it emphasizes the service nature of this fire service emergency medical response and that component. I mean, there was never any judgment from the crew at all. And I really had to kind of check my mindset to get on that program and just stop jumping to conclusions or assumptions. I mean, these guys, they took every single case I saw with the utmost enthusiasm, professionalism, and care and compassion that you'd want for yourself or for a loved one. I mean, super, super impressive stuff. All right, another one I got to roll out on, and for me, this is all new stuff. I found it hard not to really sit with some of the pain and the human element of a lot of it. So this one, there was a quick trip to a lady who appeared to be maybe homeless, on drugs. She was on the ground on a sidewalk on the side of a freeway on-ramp, and she was down with abdominal pain. And as they talked to her, she was also 5 months pregnant. And she'd been seen for the same thing a month earlier as well, when she was 4 months pregnant. And then they got her in an ambulance and got her off to the hospital to get taken care of. But, homeless, drugs, on the street, pregnant, I just couldn't shake thinking about that baby and just hoping the best for his or her future. All right, I'll hit a few other examples I made note of just to give you an idea of some of the nature of what goes on and the variety of what goes on, which turns out was completely different than the day before and completely different than the day after I was there. So the day I was there, we got a hazmat call. It was carbon monoxide exposure at the local 911 dispatch center, so the police station. So that was, for me, super cool to see that operation and behind the scenes there in the police department, but also just to see the process of these fire department guys just sticking around, seeing it through to the end. They got all the right experts on scene, looked around, found the issue, cleared the problem, and then ultimately hung out for a while to make sure all the staff were good. So there's a lot of follow through and ownership apparent in everything I saw them doing. And it was also clear that it wasn't something hierarchical, right? Where orders had to be given or someone said, all right, this is when you're good to go. And yeah, there's coordination and there's delegation, but everybody just sprung into action with the same level of dedication and just kind of divided and worked the problem very efficiently. really exemplifying the whole concept of knowing when to lead and knowing when to follow. All right, here's one on a car accident. So we had a couple call outs to freeway auto accidents, but by the time that our truck or our engine, I think it was on the engine, got there, we ended up getting waved off. Another crew had already made it on scene. They got it stabilized and got it under control. And one of these that sticks out in my mind, it must have been in the evening, because I remember it being dark, and I remember rush hour traffic was jammed up headed south. So that would have been evening time. And we'd gotten to the scene. It was in the far left lane, or that sort of emergency lane by the median. And then we got called off, right? So we got to get back to the station, got to get ready for whatever the next emergency is, which means getting to the far right lane and getting to the closest exit. So imagine, I don't know what we're talking, 4 or 5 lanes of traffic. It's hard to do just in a private, car or SUV sized vehicle when you're in bumper to bumper traffic and everybody's in a rush. I don't know. You'd think a huge emergency response vehicle with flashing lights would be allowed over, but I mention it because, not so much. I mean, it was a struggle to merge, right lane after lane with cars that just wouldn't let us over. Some did, but then others are just zooming by or cutting us off because they can just kind of shift around you more nimbly. And this is even with one of the fire department guys hanging out the window, motioning with his hand and his arm, and even making eye contact with a couple of the drivers who just pretty much ignored him. Like, I get that there's going to be some number of people who are just completely tuned out, spaced out on their phones, or just otherwise clueless and unaware. But I mean, come on, like the guys who looked and made eye contact and just ignored it. I mean, come on, we can do better than that, right? And think about it this way. The truck is trying to get somewhere else to be ready to deal with the next thing. And that next thing could be for you or someone you know or someone you love, right? So let's take that away, right? I mean, letting a first responder vehicle merge in front of you, it just isn't a big deal. You're going to get there 2 seconds and 100 feet later. Just, make space and make it happen next time, guys. And like, for that matter, I mean, maybe you just do a nice deed next time you're in traffic and let some stranger over when they signal. All right, seizures. Let's talk seizures. I mentioned that no single day seems to be the same, but it also seemed like, from what these guys are saying, things go in streaks for some reason. And the day I happened to be there, a lot of seizures or reported seizures. So the lady in the jail, another one that I remember was a guy on the street. And there's a couple interesting things here. So when we show up, this guy was down on the street, perpendicular to the curb, his head in the street. I think maybe even, maybe even his feet or his legs up on the curb or near the curb. And this is a busy street. You're talking 2 or 3 lanes in each direction, maybe a turn lane in the middle. So he's lucky he wasn't just flat run over. But a few citizens were kind enough to stop. I think maybe saw him go down, and they helped him out. They got help there, and they helped avoid any further tragedy just via the drivers and the traffic. So the fire department guys got him stabilized. Got him checked out, got him into the ambulance. But one of the most important things about this whole thing, and one of the other reasons I mention it, is when the fire, we might have been in the truck at that point, I don't recall, but when we showed up, the fire vehicle, we pulled in to basically oncoming traffic to block a lane or two to protect this gentleman who needed medical assistance that was down in the street. So we were blocking traffic for him. But I also mentioned it because when I asked about the risk of life on the job in the fire service, one of the highest causes of death, if not maybe they mentioned the leading cause of death with these guys is traffic deaths, meaning the truck is out somewhere, the engine is out somewhere, and responding to an emergency around traffic, and some unaware driver, some guy on a cell phone, some gal just not paying attention, has a traffic accident and hits one of these firefighters. So that's another awareness thing for you guys. Not just, hey, let somebody over in traffic, but when these guys are out doing their jobs, watch for them. If you're operating a vehicle, please watch out and realize this is a real thing, that firefighters are dying getting hit by cars. All right, let me talk about a baby girl. This is almost like an infant, a very small girl for a medical call that we got. And I just remember how frightened the parents were. And I thought about myself being a parent too. I know a number of the guys that were on call, also parents. But it's not just that. What I want to mention is their calm and the care that they just exude. So I can't tell you how many times I heard, "Hey, we're just going to get you taken care of. We're going to get you feeling better." Or in this case, the way that they were able to calm the parents down and the parents panic over the state of the girl, and just, get her taken care of and get her to the hospital and get her stabilized and get her on track to feeling better and being well. And the other thing I would say about the poise of these guys is, at least for me, the newness and the adrenaline or unknown, or I don't know, maybe it's just the stairs we had to climb in a few cases, had my heart rate up a few times. So I got a chance to do a little nostril breathing and reel it in. But these guys on the way out to a job and on the job, they were just so relaxed, in the zone, doing what they do. Pretty impressive. So a couple of the things I want to mention are about what I saw on some of these calls and some of the anecdotes I heard along the way about how we're deploying and using these really, really important resources in our community. So I'm gonna roll through a few resource related things. So one is, unfortunately, there was a story of a lady here in this area who she's got the right words to say dialed in, and when we talk about repeat callers, this is somebody who is calling 911 multiple times a day, and saying the right things to get fire or some other emergency response vehicle out there to her place. So if you think about this, and from the anecdote, this has actually happened. So you get somebody there who doesn't really need to be there, and then another call comes in where they would have been needed. And so somebody else has to respond. So it rotates from maybe another station, another city, another district. And then that area gets a call that they would have needed to respond to. And so you have this whole domino effect of resources shifted ultimately because of resources wasted. And speaking of abuse and waste of resources, you also have people using these guys and using ambulances like as their Uber. Essentially calling for a ride to the hospital, or, and unfortunately, sometimes people don't know any better. I think we responded to one quite older gentleman who was very hard of hearing. I don't know if there might have been a language barrier. I think dementia was stated somewhere as an issue. And so, this guy's not in his right mind to figure out how to use emergency response vehicles, but whoever the caregivers are, let's take some responsibility here in calling when it's justified and calling for help and use in the right way. Not just an ambulance as an Uber. These guys are working, guys and gals are working hard enough already as it is. Or the clinic that's got more patients than it can handle in the next 20 minutes before it closes. Don't just call 911 and ship them all off to the hospital to take care of because you want to go home on time. Come on, do your job and do it right. If this isn't what you want to do, I'm talking about the gratitude with which these guys go about their job. If it's not your calling, if it's not your passion, if it's not your purpose, do something else, right? And use our community resources the right way. And as far as community resources, I got to say, now I mentioned the nature of the part of town and the community that was where I did the ride along. I ended up in one of the emergency rooms as a case was handed over, and we got a person wheeled into the emergency room and had to do the handoff or the paperwork there. I mean, this was just horrid. The the conditions, the smell, everything that was going on in this emergency room, it did not look healthy. It did not look good by any means. I applaud the people who are working through that and getting the job done for the patients that have to be seen there. But this is kind of one of those things where if you told me like, hey, you're in trouble and you need to go somewhere for treatment and this place is your option, I would have to think real hard about just saying no. Like it was that bad. So that was kind of it for what I wanted to share on the nature of the call outs that day. Really, almost every single one of them, if not every one that day, happened to be medical. And I just mentioned that because of my going in impression that fire EMTs respond in rare cases. This was every single call for 24 hours. And fire is or was, at least in this case, the primary medical responder, and then handed off to the ambulance. All right, and I've been rolling for a while on this, but a few more things. I want to talk about what the environment is like inside the firehouse when you're not out on a call, when you are there. So talk a little bit about, to the extent there's daily routine. Let me talk a little bit about that, and then I do want to wrap up with some of my observations and lessons learned that I'm taking away, and that maybe you can take away from this as well. So one of the things about the station that I saw is that I mentioned it earlier. I think the kitchen is like it's the epicenter. It's the heart of this place, and it's really the gathering place whenever anybody is there and not doing something else, not showering, working out, or maybe catching a nap. I mean, this is the place to be. It is the heart and the epicenter, and it's not only an ad hoc gathering place. It is definitely a gathering place for meals by design for this team. So talking about team closeness, team bonding, team, the way teams work together. I think one of the ways that bonds teams is time together, but also experiences together and meals, meal prep and eating meals. I mean, time countless that has been a way that people come together around meals, and it's no different here. So there's a big long wooden table. Each guy has their traditional spot at the table, and no doubt I definitely messed up that pecking order a few times and sat in the wrong seats. They had a seat kind of for guests, so I had an assigned place and spaced it out a few times, and certainly by no means out of disrespect or disregard, just so much as ignorance, if nothing else. So the funny thing is, like, they should have just called me out on it, but the problem is they were just too accommodating and too gracious to even say something like that to someone there as a guest. So if we talk about meals, I can't tell you much about lunch. I think we might have gotten a call and we're rolling out of there. But dinner was super cool. So dinner, we had the opportunity on the truck to stop and shop for dinner. So imagine big old ladder truck, take it down to the grocery store on our way back from a call, and figure out how to park this thing, right? But you've seen the guys around when they take the truck out, and look, they're not just out showing it off. So this was a few minutes between calls. Let's grab some stuff for dinner. So let's agree on what we're cooking and what we need to get. Let's get in and out of the grocery store, get it purchased, and bang, we're out of there. So, a few things that I found interesting in watching that or tagging along behind it and being a part of it is, as these guys are going through the grocery store and they're in their blue uniforms. They are uber aware of their visibility and I would say their responsibility and their role, and meaning like their role as representatives and their role as ambassadors to the community. So whenever we turned a corner on an aisle or just otherwise saw some kids in the store, all these guys were taking a minute out of their day. They're waving at kids. They're taking time to shake hands or say hello to kids. And, it's not, hey, I'm going to do this because it's part of the job. You could just see, sort of this passion. Maybe they see themselves as kids if they knew they wanted to be in the fire service when they grew up. But whatever it was, it visibly came from the heart. And so that particular day, we we picked up stuff to do, like Philly cheesesteaks for dinner, and they pile all this stuff on, and I'm kind of thinking like, there's like a department budget because they're effectively, quote unquote, eating out. They're going out and buying stuff that they then bring and prepare at the fire station to feed the crew. But no, not the case. This is not something that's funded. This is not in our city budget. We don't feed these guys that serve us. So they were all, coming out of pocket to come together as a team and do a meal. So the other thing that I just think that's, whatever, it's insightful, if nothing else. The other thing that I thought was cool about dinner was the prep, right? So it's not just bang, a meal shows up and it's ready. They came together as a team. Everybody is washing something, cutting something, prepping something. And then the meal itself, I mean, we got a chance for all 8 guys to sit down and eat, I believe. And maybe I was surprised, like dinner wasn't interrupted. Maybe they got the right time of day dialed in, or maybe we just got lucky that day. Maybe calls die down at mealtime because everybody else was having a meal together. I don't know what it is, but we got to have a meal together. I got to kind of kick back and listen to some of their conversations, and got dragged into sharing a bit about myself. And I'll talk about that a little bit more here at the end about guys not wanting to talk about themselves. But hey, if it's their tradition, I played along, shared a little bit about myself to the extent I can come up with something interesting. But that was that. And then just again, when it comes to teamwork and culture, another cool thing in their culture and their tradition was a card game to see who's going to do the dishes. So I guess all 8 guys plus me, and it's a card game I've seen somewhere before. I don't know what it's called. I think they called it Turn and Burn, but everybody gets dealt 1 card, and starting to the left of the dealer, you can either keep your card or pass it 1 guy to your left, right? And I think what you wanted was the highest card, so naturally a really low card is going to find its way all the way around the room to the dealer. And then I think if you're low card twice, then bang, you're on dishes or something along those lines. So cool way to sort of go about it. And then, when there was downtime, guys are either, I mentioned earlier, professional athletes. And most of them are staying in top condition. It really could be the difference between saving a life, and that includes that of yourself or your buddy. Like, I don't know, imagine falling through maybe a fire weakened floor or roof, and you got all this gear on too. Maybe catching yourself as you fall and then needing to pull yourself up and out of a hole like that. I mean, it gives you a whole new appreciation for functional fitness and a whole new meaning to something like training pull-ups or muscle-ups. So when these guys do have a little bit of downtime, they scatter and they're just taking care of business. Again, it could be their workout, hitting the weight room or the exercise room, or it could just be catching a little nap because of the crazy demanding schedule that I mentioned. And I also mentioned that it's not like, 6 on, 2 hours of sleep, 6 on. This is just, you do what you got to do depending on the call outs and what's going on for that 24-hour shift. So the day and the night that I was there, from, I don't know, maybe 1 to 5 a.m. or so, we didn't get a call, which is unusual per their norm. So on what was and so those guys, they got to get some rest that night. 2, 3, 4 hours of sleep was a hugely long spell of getting continuous sleep compared to normal. So for me, on what was an unusually quiet night, I just sat there and took it all in for a while. I did a little stretching and just did some reflection. I kind of thought about getting a workout in and just trying to push through the full 24 awake to get that full experience. But at the same time, I didn't want to make any noise that might bother the guys in the bunk room that was on the other side of the gym. So eventually I went and found my rack, which was graciously provided in the officers area. So just to give you a visual there, single bed in a sort of a room with walls on 3 sides, and just brought out my sleeping bag and slept the best that I could, knowing that I had to be on alert for the alarm. And about that alarm and just the way that I sort of saw my mission in all of this, which was to observe and to learn. So, first and foremost, I was there, in my mind, I was there to be a help to these guys, right? If or where I could. But I also just wanted to be sure to stay out of their way. And in other words, do nothing to delay them, hold them back, or impede them, at all. So when we got calls, when we got alarms, I wanted to make sure that I was never going to be the last guy on the vehicle. And granted, it's a hell of a lot easier for me to just jump in and throw on a yellow coat, right? The real deal guys, they've got a whole set of kit to put on, their boots, pants, gear. So of course I was going to be a little bit faster, but that, to me, that was my thing. I am never going to be a hold up for these guys, and just, it'd be as helpful as they needed, which, these guys need no help, but in a way just to kind of be invisible, right? Be there to observe and learn without any impact. But I will say, I mentioned it earlier, kind of joking around, but on that note, I did not get to wear any sort of cool red fireman hat. There wasn't even a pole to slide down when the alarm went off. So definitely, if I'm going to be honest, I'm a bit bummed about that. But given, I don't know, given how old the station was, maybe that's just not how they built them. Maybe that's only in the movies. I expected kind of the full classic experience, guys. So maybe next time, right? All right, and then I mentioned sort of the 1 to 5 a.m. time frame. So we did get called out at 5 a.m. Alarm went off, jumped out of bed, got to the truck, and I want to mention that one in particular because it was another one that just really impressed me. And I don't remember the nature of the lady that we responded to that was in need, but I looked at my watch. I wanted to know what time we got called out. It was right at 5 a.m., somewhere right around there. And I looked at my watch again. From the time all these guys were asleep to the time we were in this woman's living room, 3 minutes, right? So in 3 minutes, you've woken yourself up, you got your kit on, you've taken a major vehicle, opened a garage door, navigated roads, directions to the address, traffic if there is any, the parking situation, and then getting out, getting the EMT kit, getting to, let's say, the apartment and up the stairs. 3 minutes. I mean, incredible. And then I think this was a lady in particular that there was a Spanish speaker, not much English. And this whole crew were native English speakers without any growing up Spanish training, to put it that way. I think a lot of them have learned on the job. So, man, 3 minutes 3 minutes after you've been asleep, you are in someone's living room, giving them potentially life-saving care and doing your best to do it in a foreign language. I mean, come on, just incredible stuff. So, on that note, let me wrap it up with a few observations, and it's really. It really is that note of its modesty, its humility. I started off by calling this silent professionals. It is just, it's anonymity for the most part as these guys go about doing such an important job for our cities and our communities. So when I'm riding around with these guys, I wanted to ask them about their accomplishments, like their past, their achievements. And to a man, nobody wanted to talk about themselves. And at times, I'm pretty sure I pried too hard, but when I did and I pushed, any accolades they would give would just be deflected off by way of talking instead about one of their teammates, or they'd turn it back around and want to know fun stuff about my son and what we were doing, or about Spartan Race, or about Krav Maga and all my craziness. But if I said deflection's not even the right word. It really is just. It's just a humility, it's a shoulder shrug about what they do or what they've done or anything being anything special. I mean, I think that's the way they see it, that there's just that humility that they don't see it as special, I think, even though it is. And it's something that they all shared. And the other thing they all shared seemed to be just a real genuine interest in others. So a term that comes to mind, that I got from Mark Devine is kokoro. And Mark says that it's a Japanese word that means heart mind in action, in service, a warrior spirit, a non-quitting spirit. And that concept it's been a little hard for me to really figure out how to embody and really understand what it means. But if I wasn't quite sure I understood the concept, as soon as I saw it in motion with these guys, when I saw it in this context, now I understand it. It's spot on. So I really want to say thank you to these silent professionals, these anonymous, humble servants. And, they may want to remain that way, but I'm going to say thank you again to the guys over there who make it happen and work it day in and day out. And, anonymity or not, I'm gonna say thank you by name. So Scotty, Ray, Austin, Andy, Dustin, Trevor, Ken, Matt, Roadhouse, Ryan, and Daryl. And hopefully I got everybody. But if you're listening, or if you're still listening, two things. Well, again, thank you. Also, if you've listened this far to my take on your day, then it's probably put you to sleep for some pretty well-deserved sleep. But second is that card game. I'll leave you with one thing on that. So I was on the verge of doing some dishes myself, and I was dealing. The thing with the dealer's position is you always get past that low card, and there's this there's this special provision to be able to call turn and burn, where everybody just turns over the card they're dealt. There's no passing the low card down. So I don't know if you designed it this way, but to me that was a flaw in the rules, because at least in my case it let me stay alive and in the game. And actually I came out as the final winner, not only escaping the kitchen cleanup, but I got the pot of cash, or I won the pot of cash, I guess I should say. So, for the guys who did remember to throw their cash in, I left it behind. Put it to the next meal, put it to the next coffee run. There's just it was a fun game, and I'm glad I missed most of the dishes cleanup. But I'm not taking money from a crew who do give so much. So, thank you guys again. And where does that leave us? So what do I know now coming out of this experience? Well, I know I'm really grateful for what it is that these guys and gals do. I know that they really are the fabric of our community, and they're more critical than I could have ever known. That said, I would also say they are overtaxed, underappreciated, abused in a way, overworked, underpaid, however you want to say it. And just, full disclosure, that's the way I see it, and that's the way I choose to say it. They probably don't see it or wouldn't even say it that way. But their lives are literally given to this job. I mean, they suffer drastically and statistically. I mean, they suffer shortened lifespans. And I think that's for a variety of reasons. So stress certainly being one, sleep deprivation. Shift work has actually been recently classified as a carcinogen, and then surely they get exposure to probably all sorts of chemicals and agents. Whether it's in the field or even in their own fire station with brake dust and exhaust and all that kind of stuff. So understanding the sacrifice that these guys make as these professionals in the line of duty in service, and understanding that importance. What can you and I do? So I'd leave you with a couple things. So one is I really thank you for listening and for learning. So just sharing knowledge and awareness is something you can do as a great start. Take away what you can learn and apply it yourself. Take away what you could share with others. That would be a positive. And even if that's just a heightened gratitude or a different spirit toward the ways you see being of service or being a better neighbor. I mean, do a ride along. If that's something you have access to, if it's something your community allows, if that's something you can get into, man, do it. It's invaluable. And find ways to spread awareness and gratitude, just in general, but certainly specific to those in community service. All right. And if you heard the podcast a few weeks ago with Olivia Mead at Yoga for First Responders, there's a real issue in fire service. And it's more than just the lifespan issue from shortened lifespan. It's suicide with active and retired fire service professionals. So I don't know how widely that's known or even talked about, but I'll just go ahead and call it an epidemic. And any way that you can support causes that you might find working to combat it would be super, super helpful. And then just, find ways to support in whatever way you can in your local community. It could be fire service. I know here they do like a 4th of July pancake breakfast to raise money. So whether it's equipment, funding, training, education that you might be able to contribute to, whether it's through, I don't know if some of them are unionized that you can support. So look for ways to do that, however it applies in your local community. And if you see them out and about, I don't know, maybe you can offer them to buy them a lunch or buy them a dinner, or you know what, just smile and wave and say thank you, because these guys really do what they do out of passion and out of love for their role in serving with each other and serving our community. All right, so again, ran a little longer than I thought. I hope there's some interesting and insightful stuff there for you. That's all I've got for this week. It took a little longer to get out the door to really try to put it together and do it justice. So I certainly hope that I have. And I hope that you took away some of the respect and the admiration and the insight that I got out of this, and that I appreciate, and that I really hope to have shared. All right. And lastly, I would say that I'm releasing this one here at the real start of the COVID pandemic. And these very guys that I'm talking about are out there putting their own health at risk, again, continuing to serve in dangerous, sometimes, circumstances. So part of what we talk about here regarding mindset is about how we all handle the unknown a bit more gracefully. So it's continuing to live and to thrive even in a VUCA environment, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And this certainly seems to qualify. So everybody hang in there. Please look for ways that this can challenge us and make us better. It can definitely help us innovate, work, and live better. And it's an opportunity to spend more time with the people and the pursuits that really matter to you in your lives. So stay safe, and we'll see you again next week.